Welcome to the Targeted SEO podcast. We're going to be going through the latest insights into SEO and really debunking and demystifying SEO for our clients, for anyone that follows us, and really, really get under the skin of SEO and different topics for our audience. This is actually one of our first shows, and subscribe and like us for a bit more, information in the future. And today I'm joined by Harry. And Harry, if you just want to give us a very quick intro.
Yeah, of course. So I'm an SEO strategist for Targeted SEO. Spend majority of my time really helping our clients understand where they're maybe taking their website, maybe understand some of the numbers behind it, and ultimately how they can apply it going forward to reach some of the goals that they're hoping to achieve.
Yeah, fantastic. And today we're going to be talking about technical SEO,
yes.
Which is a subject you're really passionate about, and you're always working on technical SEO for our clients as well. So we kind of just want to debunk, some of those, myths that really, we have around technical SEO and what it means about, really fixing a lot of errors and issues that websites often have.
Yeah, really exciting topic. Can often be quite complicated for many that don't quite understand it, but it's often sifting through the noise. It's quite easy to run these reports against these certain instances and websites or things that you're trying to understand, and get really lost in what it all really means and whether it's actually going to take your website forward. And tackle some of the challenges that you might be facing.
Yeah, I mean, we often get sent reports from clients that might have had, a report generated by another third party, and it could be an automated report from an SEO tool or software. And quite often the client will say, "Oh, you've got all these errors. My website's got all these errors, and how can we fix this?" And actually, when you start looking at it, how many of these errors are actually fundamental to, helping their website grow? And
it's quite often the case. We love our tools, we love our software, but it's really how we use them going forward. It's incredibly easy to take your domain and take a web page and put it into these tools and starts throwing out these 100-page reports and these long PDFs telling you everything that you need to do to fix right now to get to the top of Google, but it's really not the case. Quite often we see that actually only a few of these errors are something that are really impacting your users right now. And in some cases, some of these errors are misled or misguided in that they're only actually reading some of the information that you're supplying it. There can be cases where it starts throwing out hundreds of errors that are actually tackled elsewhere on your server without even any disregard to what's actually happening on your website, which can then lead to hours of back and forth with your developers or your providers to no gain. And it's really trying to mitigate that as much as possible.
And actually, you can use tools like Google Search Console to look at things like crawl errors. And I think sometimes what people don't realise is that decent hosting can also impact things like that as well.
Yeah, it's quite often the case. We've seen examples where certain prospects have come to us and they're maybe using a relatively entry-level hosting provider or a cloud hosting provider with no clear understanding of where their website actually is, or what data center it might exist in.
Where is it hosted?
Exactly.
Where's my domain?
That's the case. Well, that's another thing really, is understanding the difference between what your domain is and what your hosting is and what your WordPress instance is and how these things sort of interact. And just a case of consolidating these and understanding their locations and how they interact can start picking up and fixing some of these errors in some of the early stages.
And just going back to things like crawl efficiency, and having really good hosting obviously helps with that. But what can we do to actually impact how search engines like Google and AI systems as well crawl websites regularly? Like, is there things we should be doing around that?
It's often the case that the more you overthink it and the more you try to apply it, it's easier to go wrong. And it's sometimes the case that not worrying about it too much at all can sometimes be better than trying to overdo it and doing it really badly. You see cases then when people start trying to influence their crawl budget, or how often Google is coming back to crawl, and then they start putting things in place that really shouldn't be there on the website, that almost blocks it entirely in some cases.
Is crawl budget a thing? Like if you say you're a small business and you've only got 20 or 30 pages, should you be worried about crawl budget? Or
no? It's something that quite often in regards to technical SEO and errors in regards to something like crawl budget, you only really need to start worrying about it. I'm not saying don't be mindful of it, but start really investigating more into it the larger your website gets. And when I'm talking large websites, I'm not talking, you now reach 20 pages or you now reach 30 pages. I'm talking, large e-commerce websites that are maybe reaching the tens of thousands, seeing multiple different URL parameters start to be built within search functions, for example, or product categories. All of these need to be crawled. And Google can only look at so much at any given time. And at that point, we really want to start looking at things like crawl budget and efficiency in that case.
Yeah. So does that impact things like internal linking? How you're linking, say, for example, an e-commerce website, and you've got lots of these product pages, you've got thousands of pages, and maybe you've got a blog as well. Should we be looking at internal linking? How does that impact things?
Yeah, definitely. Things like well-structured product category pages can be incredibly important of putting a level of authority of the pages that you want Google or different search engines to keep coming back to. These internal links can be really good signals of, these are the links I want you to go and check out. So it's definitely the case, and your blogs can really reinforce that too.
Yeah, and they can help with topical authority as well. If you're trying to cover a topic in a lot of detail and you've got really detailed, blog articles which talk about the subject and then they link out to other areas and top level pages, that can really help. And that's something that we've talked a lot about before in the past as well. And I've talked about is, your silo structure and how you're structuring content is really important for that type of thing.
Yeah. Ultimately, you want to be able to keep it clean and organized. So these search engines know exactly what they're trying to understand and what these top pages are that should be shown within search results, because that's ultimately what your users want too. They want to know exactly what the top services or the top products that you're offering and finding them as easy as possible.
Yeah, and if you've got like really important commercial pages and your money pages, and they're orphaned, like they don't have any internal links pointing to them, now that's an issue, isn't it? That really needs to be fixed.
Yeah, it can be quite a common error that comes up if you're constantly changing how these pages are structured or how the categories might interlink. And then without it being well managed, suddenly you have the odd one left behind. Or perhaps you've gone for a recent migration and categories being missed, and now you have an entire category that's been left orphaned. And it goes missed for a long period of time. It's not to say that these links aren't findable. They're still within your website. They're still within your sitemap. But it's being able to reattach them, rebuild these internal links to reapply the weight and authority that they deserve.
And why is it important to have? Let's just go back to some basics. So you've got a page that's orphaned. It's a really important. And when we say orphaned, what we actually mean by that is that it doesn't have any links pointing to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Want to clarify?
Okay. Just for some people that might not be aware. So you've got this page and it's orphaned. It doesn't have any internal links pointing to it. What's the best thing? Say you're an accountant, you've got a service page, which is one of your commercial pages. It's your money page. It talks about limited company accounting. What should the practice owner be doing, or whoever's managing that website? What guidance can you give them to try and get this page maybe crawled by search engines and indexed properly in the search results?
Yeah, so for something like a key money page, it's going to take up a respectable position within your top navigation. You need to really understand
the main menu.
Absolutely, right at the top and then the menu. Really want to understand that structure first and how it's sat, and in many cases how that menu is being read by search engines and how often that's being crawled. See some cases where differences between mobile navigation and desktop navigation is rendered completely differently, and then you start to run into issues when Google is constantly crawling your website in mobile version, but your mobile menu isn't actually being picked up and recognized, suddenly you're left with an entire website that is technically now orphaned, which can lead to many different issues.
Yeah, big issue.
So yeah, really understanding where that sits within your menu is going to be top priority. And then from there, we can start understanding some of these subtopics. It might be case studies, it might be blog content that can help, maybe not directly just yet. Maybe that's an ongoing opportunity for you to kind of work to re-optimize, to focus on limited companies. But they likely already exist. You probably already have a few case studies in mind that you might have offline at the moment, or have start putting together a few testimonials and start building out those, and you'll start to recognize that there's some internal linking opportunities there that you can start pointing back to this page, to start applying that weight and hopefully get Google backcrawling and indexing it as soon as possible.
Fantastic. And can we use any software or tools to see how that page, after you've applied these internal links, is starting to get picked up by Google and AI systems?
Yeah, so in many cases, we probably want to be using something like Search Console to understand how that's being picked up, and maybe the reasons why it's not being indexed in the first instance. But we can always use third-party tools as well to start understanding things like different link structures, or how it might sit within a website hierarchy. Something like Screaming Frog, for example, is...
we love Screaming Frog, don't we?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Could be quite confusing for some to kind of look at. Is a lot of numbers and dashboards, but it's a really sleek tool to be able to start organizing, particularly your URL structures and your page patterns, quite quickly, to understand how they're interacting with each other, how they might be linking towards each other. And we can start working off that and then feeding that into Search Console to kind of almost get it validated and appearing within the index.
And quite often, internal linking can really give a website a boost, necessarily without any external backlinks, because if you've already got that kind of authority, and maybe you've already got pages which are, they're not very well, linked, and you start to apply that internal linking strategy, you can actually start to see websites grow that way, can't you?
Yeah, definitely. It's in some ways it feels like an underrated tactic. You see people that almost want to question and quiz about the possibility of backlinks and what it can maybe do for their website, without ever understanding what their internal link structure is on their website, and how that's currently working for them, or whether they even have separate archives yet on their website. They could come to us with a one-page website and they just want to jump into backlinks. At that point, you probably don't have anything worth linking back to at that point anyway.
That's just not going to look natural, is it, to search engines? If you've got a very simple website and it's got 2 or 3 pages, and suddenly you're getting all these backlinks, well, that's a penalty waiting to happen, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. And I think if you've got a website or a business model that fits on one page and is worthy of backlinks from these different press releases and articles and such, then you've really got a unicorn.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, like with our own agency website, what I've found is creating regular content that's really helpful and useful. We're actually attracting external backlinks naturally without having to do any outreach or actually buying links or anything like that. Any sort of underhand tactics. We're noticing that people are actually starting to link to our website and our content just because it's useful. So
yeah, it certainly seems to be the case. It really comes back to building something that is really helpful for your users, and if it truly is helpful, then people are going to want to talk about it a little bit more, and with that comes those backlinks back to the website. Maybe even accelerated more so in recent months, with AI citing different sources, and if you're appearing within those sources, people may begin to link back to your website without even realizing it, depending on how much they're reviewing that copy. Maybe the effects of that is yet to be seen, and maybe we'll see that in the coming months. But it certainly seems the case that more backlinks are appearing naturally in that instance.
So let's just talk about AI quickly, because obviously that is a very hot topic. But is there anything from a technical SEO perspective that people should be applying to their websites to kind of consider AI systems and how the websites are being cited? Is there any improvements that can be made?
It seems to be the case, but ultimately it seems to be the sorts of tactics, or maybe tactics isn't the right word, but sort of practices that many of us have been doing for many years. It just seems it's that they're talked about a lot more because of the incredibly relevant as we start to try and understand what is the difference between AI search or generative search and maybe more traditional search results that we've become used to. Something like Schema coming up quite a lot, but it's something that we've been applying to websites for many years for many different reasons, for many different types of search results that Google already has, whether that was map results or image results or video results. These are all different types of search features that have existed for many years before AI, and we now have the next evolution of that. And people are a little bit more curious about what Schema can maybe do for their website.
And for those that don't know, can you just explain what Schema is? Obviously I know what it is.
So Schema is the snippets of information, JSON code, if you like, that we can start to apply to these different web pages. The users don't see it unless they want to go into the source files and have a look for it. But on the front end of the website, you don't see it. But it kind of gives a breakdown, digestible format of the key points on that web page to go directly into these search engines. It could be things like titles, key headings, and descriptions right at the very top level. But it may also be things like the business address, your opening hours. It could be key pictures of the team that you may want to highlight within these search results. Review schema, it's quite a common one to be able to show the results within search engines of 5 stars of X amount of reviews to really start to improve those click-through rates within search results too.
Yeah, and we love Schema. We're always applying that, aren't we, to all of our websites. Something I want to talk about actually is Core Web Vitals, because this is very commonly misunderstood when it comes to technical SEO. And sometimes a client might email us and say, my website's really slow. I've looked it up on Page Speed Insights, and it's it looks like it's got a very low grade. And actually, when we dig into it in Search Console, actually the pages are performing really well and they're not slow. So can we just kind of explain Core Web Vitals a bit more, what it is, why it's important, and what we can do to kind of measure that performance when it comes to technical?
Yeah, of course. So Core Web Vitals, firstly, a number of metrics that really help to indicate user experience for ranking factors by Google within any given web page. It's not so much a blanket metric for the website, it's very much per web page, per URL as we begin to break it down. And they start to understand things like the largest section of the web page that may be trying to load at any given moment, or how long that web page becomes until it's interactable. The backend starts to load, the JavaScript starts to sort itself out, and you can start to begin engaging with things like forms and videos and buttons on that web page. How long does it take for all of that to start working? Not just how long till you can see the web page itself. It's quite often that you can get access to these free tools, whether it's Page Speed Insights itself or other versions.
Like GT metrics, and there's
things
others,
like
isn't
that.
there?
A couple of different options where it can simulate some of these results. And in many cases, when you're simulating these results, it might use what's called a throttled version, where it starts to simulate how your website might load on a 3G connection or a lesser mobile model, for example, which is incredibly useful if you start to understand some of your audience insights, who's on your website and why they might be on your website. It could be incredibly important. Think, are people going to be engaging with particular type of businesses during commuting hours whilst on a train? You might really want to start to understand poor connection is going to be an issue here.
Yeah.
But for many,
on the way to London, and you're trying to load
trying to load up football scores on your away day. But it can often be the case for some to consider and be mindful of. But for many, it can be a red light, a red flag that's flashing in front of them that's not actually impacting their real world users. Because when you start to look at it, their real world users particularly in a lot of the websites we work for, are people who are accessing the website on quite strong Wi-Fi, desktop models, Monday to Friday within B2B business hours. And so you don't really need to worry too much about those 3G connections, those lesser mobile models. Not to say that's not relevant for everyone, and you should certainly be aware of how Core Web Vitals might be impacting your website. But like you say, what you see in the tools compared to what you're seeing in Search Console might tell a completely different story.
Don't get too hung up on it if it's really not going to impact, the revenue, the top level kind of things that clients are really important. Okay, so let's just close up on this topic. Is there anything else we need to kind of go into with technical SEO or?
I think a really key point to highlight is some of these tools, whether they're a plugin into your website, a free tool online, they can gamify technical SEO quite easily. Like I said, you kind of see these red lights flashing in front of you, and it's really important to begin to decipher what it actually means and what it actually means for your goals going forward before you jump all in trying to fix everything, because it can waste a lot of time and a lot of budget if done incorrectly.
Yeah. Thanks, Harry, for your technical SEO insights. Thank you for watching. And if you've got any questions regarding technical SEO, please leave them in the comments and like and subscribe to our channel.